Friends, over the years that I have lived in Montenegro, I have formed a certain opinion, but I have often witnessed Russians saying about Montenegrins that they are poor, that they are much poorer than citizens of other Eastern European countries, and in general, not wealthier than Russians. Let's take a look at whether that's true or not. A very good article has come out, which I have translated into Russian. I want to read it to you. It's about how much money the population has in bank accounts. Let me remind you that the population of Montenegro is just over 600,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, 660,000. Of those, of course, some are children who don't have any bank accounts. So, adults, how many other? Probably around 500,000 people. Let's read the article. Data from the Deposit Protection Fund for last year show that deposits increased by 1 billion euros over the year, and citizens and businesses keep more than 5 billion euros in bank deposits. Compared to the end of 2021, deposits have grown by 24%. The total number of depositors last year was 787,000 people. But note that the number of depositors is greater than the population of the country. Most likely, either they also counted foreigners who have bank accounts, or if a person has two accounts in a bank, then they counted him as two people. Most likely, both the first and second options were used at the same time. And 69,000 legal entities. As for individuals, according to the Deposit Protection Fund, out of the 717,000 citizens who have deposits in banks, less than 5,000 in their accounts is held by 273,000 citizens. That is 273 citizens, approximately half of the population. They, in principle, one could say, are not particularly rich, although they have some savings, but very small ones. Between 5 and 50,000 euros in the banks, there are 435,000 depositors, that is, more affluent individuals who have somewhat more substantial savings. That's twice as many as the poor. And in addition, there are also the especially wealthy, whom we will discuss further. Between 50 and 100,000 euros in the banks, there are 5,429 depositors, and more than 100,000 euros in the banks are held by 3,500 people. As for legal entities, less than 5 euros in the banks is held by 15,690 companies. But these are surely companies that were opened by foreigners solely for the purpose of obtaining a residence permit. They do not conduct any business. All the income of these people is off the books. As you can see, that's a significant number. So let me remind you, I read somewhere here, yes, 69,000 enterprises in total have accounts in banks. Of these, about a quarter, which have less than 5 euros, were opened solely for the purpose of obtaining a residence permit. This is immediately apparent from the statistics, and this in fact is the reason why many banks in Montenegro do not want to open accounts for foreigners, not just Russians, but foreigners in general, because there is no benefit from them at all. If a company opens an account in a bank and keeps 5 euros there is no income from it. And that's why some banks simply prefer not to open accounts for such foreigners. Because there's no point. You see, a quarter of the companies, well, this is probably the overwhelming majority of foreigners who opened accounts in Montenegro bring no profit to the bank. Opening accounts for them is a waste of time. That's right. Between 5 euros and 50,000 euros, there are 59,000 legal entities holding deposits in banks. Between 50 and 100,000 euros, there are 1,408 legal entities in banks. And more than 100,000 euros are held in banks by 2,500 companies. The total amount of deposits held by these 2,000 companies, that is, those holding more than 100,000 euros in banks, is 1.89 billion euros, which averages out to 806,806.9 thousand euros per company. The share of funds deposited by the household sector in the total amount of deposits in credit institutions is 2.6 billion euros, or 55% of all deposits, making them the most significant depositors in Montenegro's banking system. The corporate sector accounts for 45% of total deposits, or 2.2 billion euros. The number of depositors who are not eligible for guaranteed deposit payouts, that is, those whose deposits exceed 50,000 euros at the end of 2022, amounts to 2,664 people, which is 0.83% more compared to the end of 2021. In fact, the logic of these people is not very clear. Why keep such large amounts in a single bank account that are not covered, that do not fall under the deposit guarantee? It would be more logical to open accounts in several banks. Nevertheless, there are some bold individuals who act this way. Thus, guaranteed deposits amount to 4.8 billion, and non-guaranteed deposits to 450 million, which together totals about 5 and a bit billion euros in deposits at the end of last year. Not such a bad result for such a small country. I'm sure this is much better than in any region of our homeland with a similar population size. and in fact, it's no worse than in most other Eastern European countries. Thank you all for your attention. Goodbye, everyone.